Hello, welcome to the Godless Family Webcast. I'm your host, Aubrey Adrianson, and with me tonight is my co-host, Amanda Hayes. Say hello, Amanda.
Hi there.
And tonight, joining us is Courtney Lynn, an author who is writing some atheist children's books, and what I'd like to do is give Courtney a chance to introduce herself. So go ahead, Courtney.
Hi, everybody. Well, as I said, I'm Courtney, and I have written a few children's books about atheism and also one about bullying. I have also written an autobiography. I know I'm kind of young to write one of those, but I've been through a lot in my life, and I wanted to get my path to atheism out there because I think that there are some people who may have been in the same shoes that I was, and, they just maybe don't have a way to get out of it. But yeah, so I'm a mom. I'm a single mom of a 13-year-old boy, and he keeps me on my toes as far as, critical thinking and all that. So he was a major inspiration in me wanting to write children's books for atheists and free thinkers.
Okay, great. And so tonight, I am going to monitor the Q&A, and Amanda is going to lead the discussion. So take it away, Amanda.
Oh, man. Okay, well, first, I guess, Courtney, you mentioned what inspired you to write your books, but why don't you tell us a little bit about them as far as, the subject matter? I know you said atheism, but you could probably go a little further into that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a general premise. There are four children who are godless, who don't believe in God, and I'm not forcing religion on children. I don't think forcing anything on children is right. But what I wanted to create was, parents who are raising children without God know that it's okay not to believe in God, because so often they're around other children who do. So when they're being told in kindergarten by their friends that they're going to go to hell because they don't believe in Jesus, they go home crying, and the parents do the best they can to console them, but there's only so much a parent can do, and if you're a parent, you know that there's only so much you can do. So I wanted to create these books for kids so they felt like they had their own voice, and they feel like they can take something from it and use it, to say, yeah, I might not believe in God, but, I know this about science, or I know this about space, or, that they can have their own voice. So my first book was It Is Okay to Be a Godless Me, and it was basically, I wanted to keep the illustrations simple because I want kids to connect to it. It's a small book. Attention span, I have a boy, so his attention span was probably 60 seconds. So I wanted to keep it a little short. So I decided to write that one, and I actually received a lot of backlash for that book. And it wasn't and the thing is, it wasn't from the religious, it was from the atheist community. And it was basically because I said it's okay to be godless. And people didn't want forced atheism is what they were calling it, or their kids to be labeled as godless. So I actually listened, and I came up with I'm a Little Thinker for the free thinkers out there and the secularists who didn't want to be labeled as an atheist. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do, another book for that. And it's basically, it's a little bit more expansive, a little longer. Pictures are still simple. I wanted to give it the feel like a child actually drew the pictures, because I knew as a child I felt more connected to something like that, like, oh, I can draw that, and then my brain kept ticking, and I wrote, I'm an atheist and that's okay. And then I wrote Please Don't Pick on Me, which is a book about bullying. And it doesn't have anything to do with atheism, but it can, because atheist kids are bullied. And it's kind of, it's kind of disgusting to really think about, but they are bullied for not believing. And I'm sorry I'm rambling, so go ahead, Amanda.
No, I think it's good. This is the type of stuff that I want to hear, because you said that with your first book you received some backlash from the atheist community specifically. And are these parents that identify as atheists?
Yes, I actually had the United Atheist page actually shared it. And it was the parents were like, well, I'm not going to label my kid as godless. I don't want them to be, that. I want them to choose their own way. And, I don't think that this is a great title. I mean, they were very vicious in what they were saying to me, like, this is horrible. How could you do this? Now, there was some positive. I mean, there was a mixture of both, but I was just really surprised at the backlash of just me saying it's okay to be godless.
I am surprised by some of the attitudes in the atheist community as well, regarding this kind of this approach to parenting, because if we're going to talk to our children about religion, and we have to, we don't have a choice because everyone else is going to do it. Why then wouldn't we talk about atheism? And why then wouldn't we say to our children, whatever you choose to believe is okay? And godless or atheist is one of the options, and this is just something that I hear myself saying over and over and over again. Atheism is an option, and if you have to tell your children that, because other people aren't saying that to your children. Other people are telling them that they have to believe in God, that they have to believe in Jesus. They're going to go to hell. And so stuff like this is just, ever since I started writing and blogging and I joined the atheist community, this is something that's been shocking me over and over and over again. So I feel your pain. I'm right there with you. I don't see that book as forcing atheism on your children. I see that as, side by side with the religious teaching that you plan on already giving your children. Or I'm sorry.
Sorry, go. No, go ahead.
I say, or in my case, where my children are starting to identify as atheist and getting backlash for it, this is something that I can see myself giving my daughter, like I said, who's already been bullied for identifying as godless, something that I can give to her to kind of help her deal with some of those issues. So that breaks my heart.
I was going to say, we just, on ProphetCast, we had Mama Atheist on, and we were talking about childhood indoctrination, because that's kind of a passion of hers. And we had asked her if she thinks atheists can indoctrinate their own children. And her opinion, she said, was controversial, because she said absolutely not. She says typically atheists raise their children to be free thinkers, and that gives them the opportunity to choose for themselves whether or not, if they want to, join a religion or become an atheist. And also, specifically, atheism has no doctrines. So by definition, you can't indoctrinate your children into atheism. But with that backlash you were getting for your book, it almost makes me wonder if people kind of felt like that, like they were forcing it on their kids. They're kind of indoctrinating their kids to be atheists before they were ready. I'm wondering if that's how they were feeling.
I mean, I think it was part of it. And I agree with Mama Atheist. There's no way to indoctrinate atheism, because atheism is a conclusion. It's based off of your understanding of, that, okay, I'll just take the Bible because that's what I'm most familiar with, but that the Bible is not true. It's not factual, so if there is no God, there's no Jesus, whatever, like, what are you supposed to do? You know what I mean? But atheism, for me, it wasn't about a matter of conversion, and I think that's where a lot of people think that atheists have converted. I never converted. I woke up. And I woke up from thinking that, I had magical thinking powers, that there was this, sky daddy up there that was, helping me do things or preventing me from do things, So for me, it was more of an awakening, and I think that a lot of atheists might feel that way if they were raised in religious households, that you realize that the religion that you were taught is not factual. You could look at it as a philosophy to live your life like by the word of Jesus in the Bible, but not as like a doctrine, like this is the word of God and this is what it has to be. There's that difference. So for me, I started looking at science and, looking at evolution and looking at all that and questioning things. So it wasn't necessarily a conversion, I guess. I don't know. I kind of rambled through that, but I hope I got my point across.
No, definitely. I think that I can sort of sympathize with the people. I don't think there's anything wrong with you calling your book that. But, my husband has kind of gotten in my case because I am really afraid of my 6-year-old labeling himself as an atheist because I am very worried about him being bullied. I'm worried about him being ostracized or teased or not having enough friends. And so it's really hard to stick to my guns and not discourage him from bringing that up. And so I think something like that, something like these books are super helpful for not just parents, but children, is, well, more for me than for my son because like I said, I'm the one that has a problem with it, obviously. But yeah, I really like the idea. I think it's great.
Thanks.
Steve Hayes says atheism is usually a response to a claim about one or more gods. It's something that we do have to remind religious folks of all the time. Yeah. It's one answer to one question, and we don't claim to have any more answers than that. And so I just thought that you would like to hear that.
Yeah,
definitely. So you may have answered this already. I think you kind of did. I was going to ask why you focused on atheism specifically, but that kind of leads into my next question about your own son. What he identifies as after you raising him, in a secular household. First, I should ask: have you been atheist all of his life?
No, I have not.
Okay.
I've only been out atheist for 3.5 years.
Okay.
Before that, I was agnostic, so I still believed that there was possibly a God up there. Like I never denied it. I think that was more so with the fear, but no, he was baptized in the Lutheran church. We didn't really go to church that much when he was younger. I know my mom went to take him when he was 4, and he walked into the church and he looked up at the cross. He goes, "Why is there a naked man up there?" So, I mean, I was very age appropriate with introducing religion to him, but for me, religion was just a staple. Like there was no questioning it because you were never told what questions to ask. So you didn't know. Like, how could you know that you don't know? So, it was Jesus was born at Christmas. He was risen at Easter. And, we celebrated all that stuff. But we were never really, Bible verses and all that. But I never really pushed religion on him because he was always a science kid. So I always made sure that he had, dinosaur stuff and, Smithsonian stuff. And it was more of, we focused really on the science and history. Now he's 13 and he identifies as an agnostic atheist after he asked me what each one of them meant. And I gave him the definitions, and he said, okay. He goes, I think I'm an agnostic atheist. He goes, because really we don't know, because we have no factual proof either way. He goes, but logically, there probably is no God. So, I'm like, hey, that's the perfect answer. I couldn't ask for anything more, But he's becoming anti-religion the more he learns about it. I actually gave him a Bible and he started reading it, and I don't even know how far he got into it. I think he maybe got 5 pages into it, and he came out and his mouth was hanging open. He said, how could people believe this? And I said, I don't know. He's like, who has children at age 600? But you know what I mean? Like, yeah, go ahead.
I would say that was a similar experience for me. When I was 10 or 11, I started asking my parents about religion and about God, and they gave me a children's Bible, and I never even made it through Genesis. I'm like, this is such crap. I am not reading this.
Well, I mean, the thing is with the children's Bible is they gloss over. They don't talk about Adam lived to be in the 900s and Eve was giving birth up until 400 and something years old. They don't say that. You don't, even whenever you read your Bible, you skip over that part. All you say is day 1 through 6, Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, and then the rest of it, then Noah. You know what I mean? Like people don't look at it specifically. They skip over those intricate parts.
I totally agree. I just was looking at a preview for a children's Bible because I've asked a couple of different times of people who own children's Bibles, and I wonder how they explain some of the really horrific things in the Bible. And so I was looking at a preview for one on Amazon, reading the story of Noah, and it was so ridiculous. I mean, they put this into these amazing pictures with like 6 sentences saying, God was very unhappy that people were forgetting about him, so he decided to start over. So he had Noah build a boat and bring his family and 2 of every animal, and then it rained a lot, and then Noah came onto the new land. And I was like, are you kidding me? That is terrible. That is so grossly inaccurate, and like it really is glazing over all these terrifying parts because no kid's gonna read that specifically and go, wow, Mom, it sounds like he was committing mass genocide.
But you know, even though it was glossed over, it was still ridiculous.
It's true.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just even to an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Definitely. Oh, let's see. We're blowing through these questions, so if you don't worry about rambling because we've got plenty of time.
Oh, I can ramble. I can ramble with the best of them.
So I guess if you don't mind, if we can talk about your son a little bit more and his own journey, what kind of feedback has he gotten, or has he dealt with anything at his school or among his friends, or has he even had to identify himself?
Well, he's been cyber schooled for the past 4 years because in elementary school, from kindergarten through 3rd grade, he was bullied really bad. It got to the point where it was physical, and then he was threatened to be shot by a 2nd grader.
Wow.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad. Like, the 2nd grader was like, I'm going to shoot you in the face with a BB gun. And I know it's a BB gun and whatever, people can make whatever assumptions they want to about that, but it was just the fact that this kid, his mother was court ordered to walk him to the bus stop, and he was in 2nd grade. And he had punched my son, he had kicked my son. Like, it was just like this massive, like, bullying campaign against my kid. And so I pulled him out of school because the school response to that was, well, I don't think he has access to a gun.
Wow.
Oh my gosh! In the state of
Really?
Michigan, they're instantly expelled. Instantly suspended. There might even be an expulsion process where they can't come back into the school. They have to go to a different district altogether.
Yeah.
If you bring a weapon on, it's definite instant expulsion.
Yeah.
So
And that's
scary.
the thing. Like, I understand that this kid is troubled. His mother is probably not. She probably shouldn't have procreated. I mean, but you feel like, as a mom, you feel for the kid who can't help the way he was brought up, but you also are a mama bear, and you're like, don't mess with my cub, So I pulled him out of school. We put him in cyber school in the middle of 3rd grade, and he's been there ever since. It's hard for him to make friends in our area because he talks about science and he talks about history. And I just went in the other day, and he was on the computer playing Kerbal Space Program, but he had the military channel on. And I'm like, okay. So, and we took him to the science center for his cyber school science club that he was in, and the science club teacher said, he pulled me off to the side. He's like, did you get him tested for the gifted program? Because he was having conversations with adults at the age of 13 that normal 13-year-olds don't have. So he's very outspoken, he's very articulate, and he wants to learn. And that's kind of like the culture I've created. I never made a question a bad thing. Even when he said why and how so much that I wanted to pull my hair out of my head, I always did the best I could to answer it for him, and I always encouraged him to ask more. And that's what I have today. Now he has aspirations to be an engineer for NASA. And he comes out and he tells me theories about dark matter. So, to me, I just let him go. And I think I do want to say one thing, because I'm really upset with the atheist community again about this whole believing in Santa Claus and Easter Bunny and having an imagination. It is okay for a child to have an imagination. It is okay for them to think outside the box and believe in that Diego and Dora are real. You know what I mean? Not real, but you know what I mean? But it's okay for them to think that way. It's okay for them to dream that maybe one day they'll swim in the ocean like a mermaid. You know, as long as it's age appropriate and they're not 12 years old still thinking that they can be a mermaid and swim in the ocean. If they're 5 and 6, what's wrong with it? So, I mean, I don't know.
I think that's a good point. There are certainly different sides to it where, people say that they don't want their kids to believe in any of that nonsense, so they'll nip that right in the bud as soon as the kid says something that's factually inaccurate. I'm sure a lot of parents will be like, well, that's not really how it works. You really believe in that? Sounds kind of foolish. What's your evidence? So I think it's really important that you can foster their imagination, because I do think that is going to help with critical thinking as well, and free thinking, that they do have an active imagination, and it's going to make them, less cynical when they grow up. I can't imagine any time they say something creative that isn't based in reality just being like, nope, you're done. That's dumb. Don't say that. That just sounds terrible. I definitely think they should have an imagination, but you should also give them the tools to understand later in life that, it is actually not reality. My son just today, we've been watching Harry Potter, and he asked me if one of the plants in it, I think it's the mandrake, the screaming plant. He's like, is that real? Can plants scream like that? And I was like, well, what do you think? And he's like, no, I've never seen one. And I was like, well, see, you came to your own conclusion there. I didn't have to squash that dream for you.
For me, the Santa Claus thing is, the reason why I hate it is because it's forced participation. Like, I don't have a choice. I don't get to decide whether or not I want to do Santa Claus with my kids, because in 3rd grade in preschool, they were talking about Santa Claus. And so that's my beef with Santa, is I didn't get to choose, and I didn't want to do Santa. It's not like I didn't have the attitude that, oh, I'm not going to teach my kid any myths. It was more like I just didn't want to do it. My husband and I don't do Christmas, and and I really feel like I had to, that I was forced, because the entire month of December, that's all I talk about in the public schools. And so that's my beef with it. Anytime, but as far as imagination goes, anytime my kids come up with stuff that's ludicrous, I just kind of smile and nod. And sometimes I'll play along with them, and sometimes I wait for them to ask if that's true, if it can happen. And then I'll go one way or the other. Sometimes I'll say, well, let's think of this through. What about this? What about that? And sometimes I'll do well, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
But I do try to make sure that they have facts. And so, yeah, I've seen really good arguments for either side of the Santa thing.
I mean, I don't think that it should be a forced participation, but I don't think that we should squash that just because it's not scientifically proven that St. Nicholas ever existed. I mean, I think that for me as a mom, it was so nice to see his face on Christmas morning just light up, because, and even for like the poorer families, the kids have hope. They have hope that they might get something, and I know that if they can't get it, but what I always told my son was, I mean, I did raise him, with Santa and with presents, but what I said was, I have to pay the elves. Santa doesn't come free. I've got to pay him. So, if you're not going to get that PlayStation 3, because I can't afford to pay Santa for it. So, I mean, it was kind of like, so I kind of like, did like this whole reality-based fantasy thing.
Santa's a for-profit business.
Yeah.
That's what I told him. I said the elves are union workers. They they take a lot of money. So.
That's a good point. I've never thought about saying something like that. I know one of my beefs with Santa is all the credit he gets for what me and my husband work our butts off to provide, and kind of like you said, if they ask for something that's completely out of your budget and you say, well, you might want to give Santa a break, they'll be like, no, it's Santa, he can do anything. And you're like, but don't get your hopes up too high because I literally cannot get you that. I'm sorry. And they're like, no, we'll just see. And then, oh, like if it comes on Christmas morning and they're like, what the Santa? Like, why do you do me like that, Santa? So, yeah, I have a problem with it. We're still on the fence about perpetuating it. We're kind of like, if they talk about it, we'll talk about it, but we're not like, yeah, go, write a letter to Santa, leave cookies out for him. So we haven't really decided what we're going to do completely. But I like that idea. I think that's a good idea. Just giving him a little basis in reality, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my son actually came up with it on his own that Santa wasn't real. He said, first of all, there's no way that one man can travel around the world, even with the time change. He goes, because they haven't discovered how to travel at the speed of light yet. So, so he discerned it on his own. But, and kids are smarter than what we give them credit for. And a lot of parents don't give their kids a lot of credit. Just because they have an imagination, like I see you have a Harry Potter thing on your wall there, where would we be if nobody had an imagination? We wouldn't have Harry Potter. We wouldn't have The Lord of the Rings. We wouldn't have Game of Thrones. We wouldn't have any of that stuff. And how many scientific discoveries wouldn't we have without an imagination? Because you have to dream big and have an imagination to have these breakthrough technologies and sciences. So...
Absolutely. Yeah. I like that you brought that up because I think that's a good segue into one of our next questions. As far as teaching critical thinking to our kids, I'm sure it's brought up a lot in secular parenting, but I feel like it's kind of inexhaustible trying to find ways to raise your kid to be a free thinker or just for critical thinking. So the first thing that I think that you said was asking questions, allowing him to ask a lot of questions and encouraging more questions. Do you, either of you, I guess, have any other ideas or tips or theories on how to foster critical thinking? I put you on the spot.
Well, I mean, I would just always follow up. Like if, let's see, we had an experiment, and because he had this book of boy stuff, and it was how to suck an egg in a bottle, and it didn't work. The egg was too big, and it like broke apart, and only half of it went in the bottle. And I'm like, okay, so what do you think went wrong? And he looked and he looked, and he said the bottle's too small. Okay, so we got a bigger bottle, and it worked. But then the egg, it sucked in too quickly. Like it wasn't supposed to suck in that quickly. So then I said, well, what do you think the problem was? Well, maybe before the egg was just too big. So we used the first bottle and got the smaller egg, and it worked great. So I would always just constantly be like, well, what do you think? Why do you think this happened? Why don't you think this happened? It was always asking why or how or what. And just kind of following up and letting him really kind of think about it. And if he was wrong, he was wrong. Then it failed. You know what I mean? Then we move on. And sometimes he would get frustrated when something would fail or he wouldn't get it right. And I said, well, guess what a failure is? He said, what? I said, it's closer to a win. How do you figure that? I said, well, are you going to do it again? No. Well, there you go. You learned from your mistake, right? Yeah. Okay, then you're going to move on and do something better. So I always kind of fostered that. I always said, fail. Please fail. I want you to fail. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Kids need opportunities to figure things out on their own. And often I find myself rushing in to kind of fix a problem for them. And then you have to force yourself to step back and let them figure out the problem on their own. But I would also add to that, that especially when we're talking about abstract ideas, things that you can't observe, giving them facts and just hitting them with facts over and over and over again. Because you can't think critically about something that you don't know anything about. So you can't ask children to think critically about religion if you're not going to teach them about religion. So I would say those two things for sure. Making sure that they figure things out, that they have an opportunity to figure things out on their own, and you're not rushing in to fix it for them or tell them what they did wrong. And then, of course, making sure that they have plenty of facts.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. I always find myself going in to help them. And it starts, with them being babies, the baby like reaching for that block and whining because I can't get it. And so you bring it over to them, here you go, and because it's hard to watch your kids suffer and to see them get frustrated. It's a lot easier just to rush in there and help them out so you can get that smile back on your face. So as hard as it is, it is something I think you definitely have to do. Absolutely. Yeah. As far as critical thinking, I am terrible at this. So I like your guys' ideas. But one of the biggest things that I've tried, and we talked about it on the episode about teaching science to preschoolers, Aubrey, is just fostering curiosity. And for me, that means not freaking out when they get into stuff that they're not supposed to. And it happens so much, especially with my 3-year-old. He's covered in flour, or he's found like my computer mouse and it's somewhere that I don't want it to be, or I think I told you he likes to tip things off the edge of our balcony, which is infuriating. And figuring like he taught himself how to use scissors by not asking me to use the damn scissors. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm like, never use scissors. And then he just like picked him up and started cutting with it. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay. Well, obviously, prohibiting this stuff is not working. So, yeah, definitely not being worried about the messes that they're going to make, not being worried about stuff that they could possibly ruin unless, it's going to actually ruin you financially. And just letting them be creative and explore without getting in their way because they're getting messy or they're ruining something or they're wasting time. I think that's the best way that I found to foster that in my experience. So yeah.
I never prohibited anything. Like I never pointed anything out and said no. I never put Mr. Yuck stickers on anything. And he never bothered them. I never had medicine in a high cabinet locked up, in like a, 3-digit safe or whatever. Like it was never like that. I just never pointed it out to say, no, this is bad. And I know a lot of parents who would point out to like their Lysol and stuff underneath the kitchen sink and say, don't touch that. Well, what happens when someone says you can't have that? You're going to want that, right? I mean, that's human nature. It's curiosity. If you don't make a big deal out of it, chances are the kids aren't going to make a big deal out of it themselves. It's just going to be one of those things. Like with the Lysol, I would show him, I would pour it in the bucket and we would clean the floor. Even whenever he was like maybe 2, I think it was, I would show him how to do it and what it's used for. That way that, somewhere along the line in his brain it's going to click, okay, I shouldn't drink this. This is used to clean the floor, Cognitively, they can't process a lot at that age, but they can process that much.
Right.
And like you with your son with the scissors, show him that it's for cutting paper only. Like, this is what scissors are for. You only cut paper. This is what it's for. Other than that, they go away. So I just never pointed it out to say no.
That's a really interesting theory. What do you think about that, Aubrey?
I definitely think that if you're going to say no, you have to say why.
Yeah. I'll always explain. Yeah, always explain why.
And so I took a slightly different approach, but very similar, where I'd say, okay, this is the cleaner. This is like you said, the Lysol, the floor cleaner. This is what it's for. And if you get it on you or in your eyes or in your mouth, you could get sick. And so this is what you do if you accidentally get it in your eye, or if you get it on your hands, you just wash your hands, no big problem. If you get it in your mouth, you have to rinse your mouth. And just went through those things with the kids. And really, you only have to say it once, although more than once is definitely better. But when you explain to your kids that something is dangerous, why it's dangerous, they get it. They don't. Self-preservation kicks in at a very young age. So I did lock things up, but right around the time when my son was 3, I want to say 3, I stopped, because he's just he's interesting. He's a very destructive boy, but at the same time, he's I don't know how to explain it. When it matters, he knows. He just he knows what matters and what doesn't matter. And the things that don't matter, he's just going to go be a crazy 6-year-old boy. But the things that do matter, he leaves alone, or he plays with it appropriately, or whatever the case may be. And usually, I only with those things that matter, I only have to tell him once. And so, yeah, that's what I did, and it's worked so far. No one's drank any bleach or anything like that, and they do have access to it. So
That's interesting. I've got an 18-month-old right now, so everything has to be locked up. And with I like your idea, Courtney, about sitting down and showing them how the cleaning agents work, to guide them through it. I don't want to make excuses, but with 3 of them, that's really hard to do sometimes, because a lot of my cleaning is done at 10 o'clock at night after they're in bed. So, that's kind of like my excuse that I don't do that. So, for fear of, me forgetting or something, I have everything locked up, at least for the 18-month-old, because I can't be everywhere at once. But I like that idea about teaching them what it's for. And I've told them why they can't, drink or play with the things like the cleaners. And my thing is always, I feel like a broken record, because I always say it could get you really sick. And so sometimes I think, I wonder if they're tired of hearing that. I wonder if I need to sit down and tell them, this could get you really sick, and you would need to have your stomach pumped, and here are the chemicals in it and why they would kill you. So I don't want to keep saying the same thing. But with a lot of the stuff, the medicine and the cleaning agents and all the stuff, it could get you sick. It could get you really sick. So that's my go-to right now.
I wouldn't be afraid to tell them, you will throw up. It could make you not see anymore. I don't be afraid to show them I don't want to say horrible medical side effects of that, but don't be afraid to say it can make you go blind. You know what I mean? If you get Clorox in your eye, you might not be able to see anymore, because they will understand, okay, well, I want to be able to see, so I'm not going to touch that, So, yeah, I would just be very clear, hey, it's not that you'll get sick. Well, what do you mean sick? Because maybe a tummy ache is sick, and, they can handle that. But no, you could throw up, or you could go blind, or, lose your sense of smell, or lose your sense of taste. I
wouldn't be able to swallow again, stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But also, my kids are at that age where I'm actually teaching them how to clean too, and so that helps.
Definitely. Yeah. My son and the 3-year-old pretty much just put the dishes away and do their laundry right now. That's about all we've gotten to, unfortunately. But hopefully soon. I still have those types where I'm scrubbing or mopping the floor, and I'm like, this is gonna be you in a year. I'm so tired of doing it. So hopefully soon. That'd be great. Okay. That was a good conversation. I liked that. I'm glad. And I liked what you said about self-preservation, Aubrey, because when we went to this 4th of July picnic, and they started a really big bonfire. And of course, in the beginning, as the flames are rising, the kids are zeroing in on it, and they're throwing sticks and leaves and whatever they can get in there. And I'm 6 feet away with my 3-year-old next to it, and I'm like, get back here, please get back here, oh my God, please get back here right now. And one of the dads that was there was like, let it go. Their self-preservation will kick in a few minutes when, the heat starts overwhelming them, and they'll back up. So I think it's I don't think about that sort of thing, and that kind of goes to what you said about giving your kids more credit. It's my fear that they literally will walk right into the fire and burn alive. So I like the idea of
and there is a point, too, as a parent, where you do have to let them burn themselves, not walk into a fire, obviously. I mean, You want to I try to choose the times
Mm-hmm.
when they could potentially injure themselves, so it's minor. Um, like a candle to teach about fire, and you set the candle out and you say if you touch that candle you're going to get burned, and then let them touch the candle
Mm-hmm.
and let them get burned, and then they know, oh hey, fire does burn, hey, that hurts. um,
Yeah.
and then when you're at the bonfire you don't have to worry about anyone falling in. So I've done stuff like that before, and I think it's helped. My children sadly aren't as good with fire safety as they should be, because my stepdad is big into bonfires, and we just go there and we throw brush on the bonfire and make it really big, and the kids get to participate. But they do know to step back. So, so we play with fire at my house a little bit.
But you're
But
teaching them how to do it right, though. You know what I
right.
mean? You have to put the brush on it, make sure that it's a dry, cleaned out area. So, granted, it's a big bonfire, but it's still in a safe environment. They're not going
Yeah,
to
it's
build a
still
bonfire in your living room.
yeah, it's still controlled.
And
Yeah.
we talk about controlling the flame, and
Mhm.
and again, they've had experience with fire before that, and we've talked about fire safety before that. So if you can plan those things out, that's a lot better. You're not, as a parent, you're not always able to, obviously, but I would definitely recommend controlling the times in which they could potentially hurt themselves, so that they can have that experience in a somewhat safe way.
I
Because
definitely
children aren't
agree.
going to believe you sometimes. It's
Oh yeah. That's yeah, I need to do that. Yeah, because when mine come near the stove, when I'm like taking something out of it, I'm like, get away. So
No, you should let them touch the stove. As long as it's not like no grease or anything like that. Like if you're just I don't know, making rice or something on the stove, let them touch the stove.
that's gonna test me, but I know it's the right thing to
You'll
do.
feel like shit. You'll feel like total shit. But it's worth it, because they're not going to touch your stove after
Right,
that.
right. Yeah, I just need to remember that. Um,
Or, I mean, you don't have to let them actually touch the stove. Even if you, in a controlled situation, hold their hand over top of that burner,
Mhm.
and you can say, "Do you feel hot? Hot. It's going to hurt." You know what I mean? Well, depending on the age, obviously you want to talk a little bit more better for an older child, but for the 18-month-old, I mean, hold it high enough above there, but let them, how the heat comes off the stove. I would let them feel the heat. Hot. It hurts. So that way they know, oh, well, I don't want to go near that. you know.
mhm.
So that way they're not touching it to where they're going to get like a physical burn, but their hands are picking up the heat.
Mhm. Mhm. I've
That's a
done
good
that too.
point. Yeah, that's a good point. So the last thing I think that I want to get to, the last like major topic, you said, Courtney, that your son has an inherent love of science, and I love that too. Um, but I'm wondering what other ways, in addition to critical thinking, how you've kind of fostered the love of science. I know, like I said in our one of our previous episodes, we've talked about doing science experiments to kind of get kids excited about it. But what have you done with your son specifically that's encouraged him to be so enthusiastic about it?
Ever since he was 6 months old, I had him watching Cosmos and Animal Planet, like Steve Irwin programs. Oh, he was like Steve Irwin's number one fan. So it was actually, I think that his love of science came from the animal kingdom more so than it did from Cosmos or space. But when he started to learn more about animals, he started to get more curious about, evolution and dinosaurs and that stuff. And that kind of led into space later on. And then he wanted to learn about the medical history of animals and so we got him like this animal medical encyclopedia. It was kind of like one of those pyramid stacking things, like one thing led to another. But when he was younger, yeah, I mean, I just, whatever he wanted, like as far as like dinosaurs or a telescope, even if it was like one of those cheap $10 ones from Toys R Us, I got it for him. Binoculars, and we looked for bugs, and we walked out in the woods and looked at the trees, and we just did, it was just like an encompassing of everything. It wasn't one specific thing, and I made everything an adventure. Even when we went traveling, it was educational. I wanted to make sure that he had, a foundation of an education even when we went to Disney World. We made sure that we did something learning in there. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of has spawned now to where he talks about his theory on dark matter. So I mean, he really keeps me on my toes. Like, he'll come out and say, "Mom, have you heard such and such?" And even like in history, he came out the other day and he said, "Did you know in World War II that such and such happened?" And I was like, "No, how did you find that out?" And he was like, "Well, I watched the Military Channel and then I Googled it." And I'm like, "Well, great. I'm glad that he felt that that he wasn't just taking the Military Channel's, account for it. He actually went and Googled it and found some articles." And he goes, "No, I didn't use Wiki because I know Wiki's not a reliable source." But yeah, so that's kind of what I did. I just kind of I wanted an all-encompassing thing, animals and just life in general. I just didn't want him hindered in any aspect. So, and I definitely fostered his enthusiasm.
Okay.
Awesome.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it definitely does.
Okay.
Yeah, like I was saying, my oldest is 6, so I don't like to think that I'm really that experienced when it comes to these sort of things, and I'm pretty frazzled. So this stuff is like, I'm soaking this up like a sponge. So yeah, I think that you answered that perfectly. What about you, Aubrey? Do you have? Oh.
Something just fell upstairs. It scared the crap out of me. Yeah, I would just say let the children guide you. That's what we've done. My daughter is really interested in science, evolution, Big Bang specifically. She's really into black holes. Last we talked about science, she's really into black holes. Right now, she's got this whole fantasy world going on, revolving around the book series called The Warriors. She's read that entire series, and so it's all fantasy play. And she's trying to get me into cosplay with the Warriors. She wants me to make her cat suits and stuff so that she can so she can do all this warrior stuff. So we haven't talked a lot about science lately, but before the Warriors came in, it was black holes. And again, it just like how Courtney was saying, it's just whole kind of branching off this way, and then we're branching off that way, and it did actually, I would say, all start with TV and books. Like we would, what was it? Walking with Monsters. That's what it was. It's a short mini series that you can find on Netflix, and it was about the different animals in our prehistory, millions and millions or billions of years ago, I think even, and it's just really fascinating. And the graphics are amazing because now we have CGI and all this stuff that artists are drawing what they think these creatures would look like, and that they talk about the behavior of the animals, what they ate, what the environment was like. And that's what kind of drew her in, and then came the dinosaurs, and then the saber-tooths, and so we've kind of went down the evolutionary chain a little bit, and then we got into space and the Big Bang, and we started buying books for that and watching television shows for that, and it never ceases to amaze me how many small children love documentaries. Because I can't stand them, but my daughter loves them, and my son will sit through them, and they're better now because of the graphics, and we have more information now than when we were a kid too. So they're done in a way where they do hold the child's attention, which is really nice. And so, and then so then after that, like I said, you let the child lead you, and then after that, my daughter has come up with ideas for experiments or world exploration, or I'll come up with something and bring it to her, and if she's interested and we do it. If she's not, whatever. I just kind of let her. I've always just kind of let her lead the way, and I think it's paid off. She's pretty smart.
Awesome. I love it. I had my 6-year-old the other day. I think it was spurred by Harry Potter, which I'm sure you can imagine I talk about it all the time. Kind of obsessed with it at my house, so not ashamed.
House, so I understand.
So he was kind of like started getting interested in like potions and making potions, and so he asked my husband and I for like a glass and some food coloring. And normally, my first instinct is like red flag, like, no, it's gonna make a mess. I don't want to do that. But we gave him some glasses, and then he wanted like even more glasses and wanted to try even more colors. And then he had like a big bowl where he wanted to mix a bunch of colors together, and it just turned brown and dingy. But it was still like really amazing because he had these like glasses, and don't judge me, but I gave him these little wine glasses that I had so that he could see through it. But he had like this little like wine glass of like bright red and this little wine glass of bright blue. And so I was teasing my husband yesterday because I'm like, what? It was still there like a day later. I'm like, which potion would you like to drink tonight? This is of superior strength and hydration. So that was really fun because he was really enthusiastic about, mixing the different colors and what it would look like in different containers, and if we should keep it outside or inside and what that would do to it. So, and that was totally, he initiated that. I didn't say anything about that. So that was really great. I really liked that. As far as dinosaurs, I like that. I wrote that down, walking with monsters. I like that. I think that's a good idea. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's funny. My children just made potion 3 weeks ago, something like that, because in the Warriors books, the cats there's these medicine cats, and they're making potions, and I like gather art supplies periodically, and I just put them in a box for the kids, and in those art supplies is like rinsed out applesauce cups so that they can use for paint and stuff. So they got those out, filled them up with water, and then took apart their markers and colored the water with their markers. And they did this all upstairs without my knowledge at all. And then they all spilled.
Oh, no.
So there's water all over the carpet. And I'm downstairs, and I'm like, I don't know, I was typing something for my blog or something at the time, and I hear, "Shh, don't tell Mom." Oh, crap. But they were so into it. It was really cool. It was the same thing. They were mixing the colors. And I thought it was really ingenious of them to pull the markers apart and use the markers to color the water. And then they used toilet paper instead of a towel to clean up the mess. But they loved it, and it was just a really awesome experience for them.
That's great.
And I know I have a science corner on my website because I want kids and parents to get together and do a science experiment together and talk about it. And if it goes wrong, figure out what went wrong. I even posted a video of myself doing the little egg in the bottle trick, and it didn't work for me this time. But I left the video like that because I wanted to prove a point that, yeah, okay, so just because it didn't work for me doesn't mean that it's not a great experiment to try. But why don't you try a different bottle? Why don't you try a different egg, So if you have a kid and it doesn't work, explain to them, okay, so what do you want to do? What do you think would be better? And in my books, my last book, I'm an atheist, and and that's okay. I actually included 2 science experiments to try, just because I want kids to start, and I want parents. That's the biggest issue. I want parents to get involved. Parents or guardians, I hate to say it, parents or guardians, get involved and make sure that the kids are doing something and are expanding their mind. Because they can't do it alone. You have to be there to help them. So.
Absolutely. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to tell you, I actually have this really cool experiment that I'll give to you guys that my son did for his science class. It was grow your own stalactite, and it was like 2 different jars, and you could have food coloring in it, and then like the little beads meet in the middle. And if you have 2 different colors, they like red and blue, they'll form purple in the middle. So it's really nifty.
That's cool. Awesome. Yeah, that's cool. So I was going to ask if you had any final, I guess, resources in general that you use or that you have used that kind of helped guide you when it comes to writing your books or writing more about science, just any resources for parents in general that kind of inspired you, aside from what we already talked about. I mean, I don't know if you have any favorite authors for your kids or your son. Sorry.
I mean, when I write, I don't. I mean, it's more rhyming than anything, but I base it off of my own experience as a mom. So that's my resource, and I hate to say that because I don't Google anything to help me write, because they are simple books. I mean, they're not like complicated. But for me, like I really just tend to look at. I don't even know how to say it. Like I tend to look at things from a child's perspective whenever I start writing, and whenever I start drawing, like I put myself in that place. So I don't really have like any kind of like websites or anything. I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay.
I know that a lot of parents have recommended some books and resources like Parenting Beyond Belief, and stuff like that. So I hear that those are really great.
I like Parenting Beyond Belief, but I think for me, I can't like sing its praises, till the cows come home, because it was all over the place, I felt like, and it was just like short excerpts from each author that contributed to it, and you didn't really get to go into a lot of substance on each topic. So that's my one critique of Parenting Beyond Belief, but it was super helpful, and I enjoyed reading it. But Aubrey is also an author, so I would love to. I know you've mentioned it on the show before, Aubrey, but you should talk about your books again because I think they're great.
Oh, I didn't want to take away from Courtney. The one book that I really want to push is the fiction novel that I wrote for young secular children or children of secular parents is how I try to market it. And it's the story of a little girl who is resisting choosing belief or non-belief. She trying to stay neutral and gain more information, and because her parents are telling her that she doesn't have to decide, and then she has a friend who tries to force her into a religion, and she gets bullied, and just kind of some of the things that happen in that situation, or things that could very well happen in a situation like that. I think our children are in those situations, in the public schools especially, or in a private school, really. And so that's what that book is about, and that's the one I really want to sell. The other one is more of a guide. It's the Secular Parent's Guide to Teaching Religion. Basically, I did a bunch of research for that book and tried to summarize 5 religions as best I could, and then give like critical thinking questions and project ideas that allow children to work with the information in each chapter, and that's free on our website.
That's awesome.
And for the Secular Parents Guide, I mean, I really did a lot of research for that. I went to the library and I was pulling up books, philosophers, or not philosophers, but religious doctors like PhD, I mean, who done a lot of research and wrote books or encyclopedias about religion, so that I could most accurately sum up the entire religion, which was incredibly difficult, summarizing all of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
I realized is really quite darn impossible. So I spent a lot in that. You'll hear me say, well, some people, some Christians. And then for Aurora and the Secret Friend, this was, I postulated a possible reality that I could envision my daughter being in, and wrote what I think would happen in that reality. So that was my inspiration there. And then hopefully I'll write the follow-up to that sometime this year, although I've been so busy I just can't get to it. So hope that answers your question, Amanda.
Yeah, definitely. I was hoping in the first part you didn't say the name of the book, so I wanted to get back to that and be like, wait, you didn't say the name of it. But you did just now, so that's good. Aurora and the Secret Friend. Yes, I downloaded that and we started reading it. And I have to ask, I haven't got very far in. So Faith is her friend, right? Is that a coincidence that you chose her name as Faith? Just
No,
wondering.
that was what's the word I want to look for? I can't think of it right now. There's a literary term for it. No, but that was very intentional.
Okay. I thought so, that she had the theist friend whose name is Faith. That's awesome. Yeah, so I'm glad we got some of those other resources out there. I don't know how I didn't realize you wrote the Secular Parents Guide to Teaching Religion. I didn't realize that that was available, and so I'm going to go get that immediately after the show.
Well, it's free. Don't go get it. It's free on the internet.
Okay. So yeah, I think that's all we have. I don't know. Before we go, Courtney, do you have anything that you want to promote? Your website, maybe, where they can buy your books?
Yeah, on my website, all of my books are signed. So it's Courtney Lynn, author CourtneyLynn.webs.com. The only reason I haven't changed it yet is because, authorcourtneylynn.com, is because I accidentally printed out 500 business cards with the .webs in it. So I'm going to have .webs for a while. But yeah, honestly, the one book that I really, really want to get out to parents, it's not anything to do with atheists, but it's the Please Don't Pick on Me book, because it shows what kids go through. And then I have like a scene where the kid's getting bullied and a scene where the kids are getting along, because I kind of wanted the side by side, but I wanted to hit the adults and the parents more than I did the kids, because the adults and the parents just aren't listening. And they're saying, ignore the name calling, and kids will just be kids, and that's not the conversation we need to be having. Obviously, that conversation's not working, because bullying is getting worse, and we have 12-year-old kids committing suicide because they're being bullied. So I really want people to get out there and, if you can't buy the book, at least share it, because I think that it's important for kids and parents and teachers to have this conversation about bullying.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, and we could get a link to that book specifically, and then tweet it out later on. So thank you. Yeah. Sure. Aubrey, I want you to go last, because yours is the whole subscription and all that, and I think it's the most important. Mine is the same as always. Watch ProfitCast every Sunday at 9:30. Sometimes I host, sometimes I do not. Next week I'm not hosting, but you should still watch anyway, because it's still all right even when I'm not there. And then still doing this segment called Unveiled for the Quranify Me podcast about Islam and the Quran. So I'll be releasing a segment soon on honor killing, because I think it's a huge problem in the Muslim world. And that's it. And then my blog, Humanist Mom, and my Twitter, but that's at the bottom right there. You can see that already.
And then the big news, as Amanda said, the subscriptions portion of the website, I decided to take that off. I felt like that it needed to be free. I guess as a parent, you're constantly looking for resources, and you can't just constantly pay for everything that you come across. So I made the website free. And then asking that if you do want to support the webcast or the website, that you can make a donation, you can purchase something at besecular.com, or you can buy Aurora and the Secret Friend. So that's the big announcement there. And then next week, Amanda and I don't really have guests lined up, so we decided that it would be fun to do an episode with the dads. So it's going to be, secular fatherhood or atheist fathers. Haven't decided yet, but we're roping our husbands in to do the show, and they'll have some talking points that they're going to cover, and I think it'll be fun. Amanda, I think you said Steve is on board.
Yeah, I think I asked him. Maybe not. I did just ask David Curry, though, so David will be joining them. He's very excited. He was on board right away. So it'll at least be Steve and Adam and David. And I can't imagine Steve would say no to being on camera and talking about himself. So that's not going to be a problem.
So it should be fun. And
yes.
That's it. I think that's everything that I have.
Yes. Okay.
All right, so I guess that's it, guys. Thank you so much, Courtney, for coming on the show. We really enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I'm very, like I said, I'm very interested in your books. I think that even, my 6 and 8-year-old could get something out of them. So I'll be checking those out, and I'll provide links to your website and those books on godlessfamily.com. And next week, the guys will be on, and I think that's it. I think maybe we'll just say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Next week.